Hello, and welcome to Unstuck by Nicole, a little perspective in your pocket to help you think differently, lead differently, and live a little more intentionally. Today's episode is inspired by my latest article, Your Body Speaks Before You Do. While I was writing it, I realised there was another conversation sitting underneath it that I couldn't quite fit onto the page. The article explores how our body language influences both how other people experience us and how we experience ourselves. But as I sat with it afterwards, I realised this isn't really a conversation about body language at all. It's a conversation about presence, about the energy we bring into a room, about the way people feel when they're around us, and about how confidence often has far less to do with what's happening in our minds than we think. So today, I'd love to explore that conversation a little further. Now, when I say presence, I'm not talking about being the loudest person in the room, having the strongest handshake, or walking around pretending to be confident. I'm talking about something much quieter than that. The way that we move through the world and the energy that we bring into a room, and ultimately the way people feel when they're around us. And one of the first things I notice when I meet someone isn't what they're wearing or whether they're naturally introverted or extroverted. I'm watching something much more subtle. I'm actually looking for how comfortable they are. Do they seem safe in the environment that they're in? Do they acknowledge the people around them? Or are they rushing? Are they trying to disappear into the background? Or do they seem grounded? I've always done this. It's just how my brain seems to work. I don't consciously walk into a room thinking, right, I'm going to analyze everyone. It just naturally happens for me. And I can often tell when someone isn't quite themselves before they've even said anything. And I can notice when the energy in a conversation changes. And sometimes I'm able to predict what's about to happen simply by observing people's behaviors. And for a long time, I didn't really know why I noticed those things. But coaching simply gave me the language to explain what I've instinctively been observing for years. And here's what I realized. Our bodies are constantly communicating, not just with other people, but also with ourselves. And one of the biggest misconceptions I come across is that confidence begins in the mind. We tell ourselves that once we feel more confident, we'll finally speak up in the meetings or ask for the promotion or deliver the presentation or put ourselves forward for those opportunities. But I honestly think we've got it backwards. Sometimes confidence follows our behaviour, not the other way around. And I remember coaching a leader who was the youngest member of her executive team and the only woman around the leadership table. And she was exceptionally capable, yet she believed everyone else had more experience, more credibility, and more knowledge than she did. When I spent time observing her, it became really obvious that people weren't overlooking her because she lacked ability. She was unintentionally communicating uncertainty. She rushed everywhere in the office. She spoke really quickly, and she was constantly filling her arms with laptops and notebooks, coffee cups, and just running around between meetings. Everything about her body language screamed, I'm just busy. I'm busy and I'm frantic. And nothing about it said, I am present. So we didn't begin by changing her mindset. We actually changed her presence. We got her to slow her pace and the way that she was walking through the office. She actually stopped trying to multitask while speaking to people. And when she was presenting, she actually stood in the room. She made very, very genuine, simple eye contact, and she became incredibly intentional with the way she moved through the office. And literally almost overnight, something changed. People started responding differently to her. But here's the bit I find most interesting. She started responding differently to herself. She started believing herself. And I absolutely love that phrase because I actually think it explains confidence better than almost anything else. People often think confidence is something you have to convince yourself of. But when you begin behaving differently, people begin responding differently. And eventually your brain starts collecting evidence that maybe, just maybe, You do belong in the room after all. Now, something else that really important to me that stands out is that confidence and arrogance are not the same thing. In fact, I think they're almost opposites. When somebody leads with arrogance, they often dismiss other people and their opinions. When people lead with confidence, you create space for others. I've met some incredibly confident people throughout my career, and very few of them are the loudest person in the room. They're usually the ones making everyone else feel comfortable. They're very curious, they're calm, and they're intentionally listen, and they help other people shine. And to me, that's true presence. Whenever I walk into a room, I consciously slow my pace, not because I'm trying to look confident, but because I want to arrive. I smile, I greet people. If I know someone, I have a conversation with them about something that's actually happening in their world. My intention isn't to become the center of attention, but it's to make other people feel seen. And ironically, I think that's exactly what creates presence. Now, I should also say I'm not immune to any of this. When I'm anxious, I notice my own ability to regulate my presence changes. My filtering can become noisy, and I don't always read the room as clearly. I typically absorb less information, and I can feel myself becoming less intentional. And afterwards, I usually know it. I can feel it in me. Now, I don't share that because I think we should all strive for perfection. I share it because awareness is powerful. And the more we notice our own patterns, the easier it becomes to gently guide ourselves back to the version of us that we want to be. So, if I could leave you with one thing to experiment with this week, it would simply be this: walk 20% slower. That's it. Not because slower is always better, but because slowing down creates space. Space to notice, space to think, space to connect, and ultimately space to arrive. And I'd be really curious to know what changes for you, because before you've said a single word tomorrow morning, your body will always be speaking. The question is, what story do you want it to tell? Thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, I would genuinely love to hear from you. Send me a message on Instagram or on Substack and let me know what stood out to you or what changed when you experimented with your own presence. But until next time, thank you for spending a little time with me, and I will see you in the next episode.